Hello, my beautiful fellow seekers. I am so excited to spend a little bit of time talking about this Sagittarius full moon happening on June 14th, 2022. This is going to be such a beautiful moon if you want to get really concise, clear wisdom. This is going to be a moon that helps us see from the expanded vision because, okay, Sagittarius energy in pop astrology is often teased for being very blunt, being a little bit hard to pin down, being a bit like, I'm here, I'm there, oh hey, last minute plans, kind of stuff like that. But I think at the deeper level, Sagittarius energy, the archetype, the viewpoint, this is about philosophy. This is about expanding our vision. This is mutable fire. So this is not going to be about how we construct little boxes for ourselves and then stay in those little boxes and then control our lives and neurotically obsess over everything. The archetype of Sagittarius, of the centaur, of this energy of the ninth house is about expanding and looking at the world from a philosophical lens, looking at it kind of from a perspective of understanding that we are a part of something bigger. And how do we talk about that something bigger? How do we envision that something bigger? Because it's important for us to check in with our life philosophy and the way that we envision the cosmology of our lives. And this full moon can really help us do that because we can get into some dark cosmologies. We can get into cosmologies where we are a part of this horrible machinery or a party to a lot of really big, deep grief and trauma, and those can be very real things that happen, and there's a perspective there that's important. We can also work on our own cosmology and cosmovision and all of that. Different words can be used for this. I just like those, about how we perceive ourselves and the way that we converse with the universe, the way that we converse with ourselves and others, the way that we communicate, the way that we see. This is a very poetic, creative, playful energy. And I think, Sagittarius is also very tied to concepts of optimism and just going for it and trying things out. And I think, one of my favorite things that went around the internet like a year or two ago was about, redefining optimism. A lot of times when we hear the word optimism, we just kind of think of Pollyanna. So like very innocent, just being like, everything's going to work out and it's going to be fine. And then really thinking about optimism more as in, here are the materials I'm working with. What am I going to make from that? How am I going to work with that? How am I going to nourish myself with what I have? And I think that's a really important aspect of Sagittarius energy whenever we are working with it. So this full moon, for me, Sagittarius energy and this full moon every year tends to be the full moon. And this is once again, just for me, maybe for some of you as well out there, I'd be curious to hear, where I get the most concise to the point information I need. This is going to be about here are like the 3 bullet points of wisdom you need to take with you through this moon cycle and into the next part of this year. I find this moon to be so illuminating, really powerful, and very, very useful in just getting a clear perspective. And I think this year is no exception to that. So we have the moon at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. It's going to be opposing the sun over in Gemini, creating that full moon. And the moon is going to be sextiling Saturn in Aquarius at 25 degrees. So that's going to be the big aspect of this full moon, is going to be the moon and Saturn sextiling in very big perspective energies. Sagittarius and Aquarius are both going to be invested at looking at the bigger picture. I think this is important because of course, the day-to-day routines, the way that we show up in the little details, taking those little rituals, taking those 5 minutes to show up, to write or to paint or to practice a skill are so important. They are very, very powerful tools. And Gemini energy in general, when we are in the midst of Gemini season, is very invested in that. And the way that we show up to our conversations, the way that we show up in this day, in this moment, right here, right now. But sometimes we can get into a little bit of tunnel vision where we don't have that perspective, right? And I know I've done this so many times where I will be thinking about my to-do list. I'll be thinking about my goals. I'll be thinking about the things I need to do. And I keep looking at them from the perspective of down here, I'm this little like ant carrying my weight through the world, really hyper focused on how I'm going to get it done, how I'm going to get it all done, how I'm going to control it all. And what I love about this full moon is it helps us to take a breath and remember, kind of snap out of that phase a little bit and remember what it is that we really want to be spending our time and our focus and our energy on. And that is where Saturn comes in to play here, because Saturn, I always like to say with Saturn, it's quality over quantity. Now, this is really interesting in the context of Sagittarius, a Sagittarius full moon. Sagittarius is often associated with expansion, with playfulness, with starting 100 new projects and not finishing any of them, playing and dabbling in all sorts of different, opening all the roads and just seeing what happens. And I actually really love that about Sagittarian energy. But the Saturn sextile here is going to help balance that out by having us focus on the roads that we really do want to pursue, on the places where we do really want to put our energy. And this is not a full moon about taking everything with you, about doing every single project, about being every single person for every single relationship in your life, about wearing every single hat. This full moon, and this is where the potency of it comes in, is going to give you that wisdom that's like, here are the two things that you know matter the most. How are we going to prioritize those? How are we going to let those shine through your skin? How are we going to get those to be the center of what you're doing in your day and weekly routine? And how are we going to allow ourselves, if we have thoughts that say, that's not allowed, I'm not good enough, this world wants to crush me and crush everybody around me, if we're having those thoughts, this is also going to be a full moon that helps us examine those and look at those and see and examine the truth of them. Examine what they are doing to us internally and examine how we are treating ourselves and our own visions. So I think this can be a really, really helpful full moon. It just kind of workshopping how we talk about the things that matter most to us and how we tell the story of whether or not we are allowed to care about those things. And the other part of this is that we have a lot of projects and ideas in our minds, all of us. I think every human has so many aspects to themselves. You know, they might have different relational aspects and different work project aspects. Part of themselves is very good at organizing and putting things in different containers, and another part that's very creatively expressive. And it can be challenging to figure out, what do we prioritize, what paths do we follow, and this full moon I think can really help us get very honest, because some of those hats that we are wearing, some of those roles that we are playing, some of those routines that we are replicating over and over again, they're not really speaking to our soul. And I realize this is complicated because there are plenty of us that we have responsibilities, we have others that we care about, we have things that need to get done that maybe, we know already, like, this isn't something we need to workshop. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I would love to just take all my energy and be over there. And of course, I'm not going to just pretend that that's not happening for people. But there are certain things that we are continuing to do, certain ways that we are thinking about ourselves, certain little tiny routines and certain projects that we are forcing ourselves to stay on, even though we don't actually have to. And that's what I think this full moon is really going to be helping us to explore and see. And this doesn't just apply to creativity. This can also apply to, like, if you have relationships or friendships or situations where you feel like you have to just keep showing up at that table. You can't give up on that person who is kind of flaky, kind of likes you, kind of doesn't, sometimes responds to your texts, but you keep showing up at that table hoping that it'll change. This full moon can sometimes help with kind of seeing that with fresh eyes and deciding if that's really a project, a hat, a role that you want to keep showing up for. And that's exactly, I mean, it's more than just what we do in our day-to-day routines. This is about how we envision and sit with ourselves in our own lives, and that can look like a lot of different things. But regardless, Saturn's influence here is going to be about simplifying and getting rid of something. This is a full moon as well, so this is about release, right? And both Sagittarius and Aquarius are very invested in seeing what happens when we do things a little differently. So this is also about just being open-minded to what wants to change and what wants to be done a little differently. The Emperor came through. And that's actually really interesting. I didn't bring this up in the main discussion just now, but Mars and Chiron over in Aries are going to be conjunct during this full moon. Mars, the warrior, here meeting up with the wounded healer. You can imagine that this is going to be quite a potent conversation. And I think the Emperor here, which represents Aries, is kind of leading me to talk about that Mars and Chiron conjunction during this full moon. I will say this, the Mars-Chiron conjunction is about healing the parts of ourselves that force, that motivate, that we use to motivate ourselves through force, through pushing through making things happen, through torturing ourselves. Chiron always comes in and gives us some softer medicine that reminds us that sometimes the things that we are, we're trying to put on the costume of wearing all the hats, being able to do it all, not being awkward, doing all the right movements in life, being, so consumed by pushing. Chiron is a reminder that we don't need to put on all those costumes, that some of the things that we are struggling with, some of the aspects of ourselves that we find to be problematic or annoying or lacking can actually be the things that are going to give us the tools with which we move through this life. And that's a big sweeping statement, but that is what Mars and Chiron here are asking for. For me, healthy Emperor energy, healthy visionary leadership energy like this does not come from force and violence to ourselves in our mental process, in our cosmology, in the way that we treat others, and especially in the way that we treat ourselves. A healthy, empowered Emperor energy is going to be about feeling that we are respectful of ourselves, that we are respectful of who we are, that we are respectful of our dreams, that we are respectful of our quirks, that we are respectful of our energy levels, that we are respectful of our preferences, that we are respectful that maybe we don't have a vision board that matches what we think the vision board should be, and that our vision board's a little different. There is a deep level of respect that comes up when I see this Emperor card, and it is about the relationship we have with ourselves and with the cosmovision of our world. And so this full moon in general is going to be about, do you respect your own preferences and visions? And, it's okay if you don't. Believe me, I'm working on this all the time because I have a very strong inner critic that will tell me that's childish, that's selfish, that's careless, you're not even thinking about the people who are suffering. All sorts of mean things that are said to myself when all I'm just asking for is I just want a little peace and quiet. I mean, literally that's on my vision board. It's like front and center. I love some peace and quiet. And so this is about that self-respect that we have for ourselves. Four of Cups came out as well. Very interesting. Very, very interesting combo, wouldn't you say? Emperor is so much about forward vision and being kind of at the head of something and seeing out and having perspective. And the Four of Cups is about that lack of perspective. The Four of Cups is about being in this state of mind where it feels like we know all the elements. There's no solution to this. This is just what we're working with. This is it. This is the final thing. There's nothing else we can do about it. And yet there are other ingredients wanting to come in. And I think that's a reminder here for this full moon in Sagittarius, that keep your mind open as well. You may be at an impasse with a process or a relationship or work or money or any iteration of being a human in this life and being like, what the heck? What is going on? Apparently there's no solution to this. But the Four of Cups is a reminder that there are often little doorways, little connections, little conversations, little clarifiers that are going to come in and help us see that situation and ourselves within it in a new light. And sometimes it only takes the smallest shift in perspective or the smallest hand reaching out to help you, or even you being the one to reach out a hand to help somebody else, that can really change completely an entire scenario. And I think the Sagittarius full moon in essence is about keeping our hearts and minds open to that. And keeping our hearts and minds open to solutions, doorways, opportunities. And once again, I want to be clear too about this whole idea of doorways and pathways and opportunities, because especially in the American context, that comes across as being about winning a Ferrari or getting $1 million in the mail, or, you know, these kind of like opportunities, like it's going to be this big, bold business opportunity. And I think for me, opportunity and new paths and new doorways are a lot softer. They're a lot more magical. They're kind of bathed in this mysterious light because it's the little things. It's the sunlight coming through the window in a moment where you feel like your mind is just going in circles and spiraling, and it suddenly reminds you of something beautiful and expands your vision. It is that friend just sending you a text or giving you a phone call right when you need it. It is that impulse to help somebody else out. It is picking up the right book at the right moment. It is sharing a laugh with somebody that you really love. It's those things that are opportunities. It is those things that are creative bridges. It is those things that can help shape our cosmology and can help shape the way that we view our lives. And I think the Sagittarius full moon brings us back to those basics, even with the sextile here with Saturn, which is just telling us to focus on the quality over the quantity. It is just telling us to focus on the things that really feed our soul and let go a little bit of all the busy running around and machinations that we have for trying to control all these other things that don't matter. And that's really, we're just coming back to basics with this full moon. Like I said, this is a full moon that will tend to be honest and give you wisdom in very clear, precise sentences. So pay attention to those clear, precise sentences that are coming through during this time. I will be doing a beautiful activation for this over on my Patreon. It is a beautiful community and I would love to see you there. Those of you who are with me, thank you so much. You have changed my life and I am just so proud of that community and everything that we have shaped there. It really is so important to me, so I'd love to see you there. You can find me on my Instagram. There's only one true Sarah Verba, so make sure you follow the right handle. And you can find me on my website and my email. I'll leave all of my links below so you know where to find me. I hope you stick around, subscribe, and like, and just be my friends on the internet here. I really, really appreciate your presence. Let me know how this full moon is going, and I will talk to you all very, very soon.